organization in such a way as to maximize, so every individual can maximize their benefit. But again, I'm curious to wonder the extent to which, in this case, generals did sit down together and actually say, well, how shall we organize our structure in order to maximize Axelrodian cooperation? Obviously, they never read Axelrod, but I mean, in some sense, does the High Command tailor the institutions in order to achieve the results that you're talking about, or do they, in some sense, emerge by not a simply Darwinian process, but some sort of quasi-Darwinian? And I think we need probably research on that very question. And on the matter of religion, it does seem to me vitally important to know whether religious people are being manipulated by leaders or are being manipulated by means, because that's a first step towards combating the menace which is religion. Turning to Dr. DeRose, I'm trying to work out why I found it difficult to follow quite what he was saying. I think it was because at several points, crucially, I could have done with a for example. I mean, we heard that evidentialist views that all beliefs should be based on evidence will lead ultimately to what he called an intolerable skepticism. And clearly he didn't have time to spell out the epistemological reasoning, and I'm certainly not asking him to do so. But it would be quite nice to hear an example of what, just one example of what intolerable skepticism might look like. I mean, how would we recognize intolerable skepticism if we saw it? So perhaps in a moment he might respond to that. He then went on to discuss ways in which beliefs might be rationally held in the absence of evidence. And he invoked the idea of parity, which I understood to be something like this, that we accept certain perceptual beliefs as the fundamental evidential data which we just accept, and we can't prove that they're valid if we see something and we just believe it's true. And by analogy with that, it may be that some of the experiences which mystics and other religious people report as, I have experienced God, and this experience is just as real to me as my experience of this microphone or this book. So by an argument of parity, I should accept the experience of God as just as valid as the experience of my own eyes. Dr. DeRose himself was not wholly convinced by that, and he went on to talk about the reason why you accept your primary perceptual data is rather more that they all hang together, they make sense in the context of each other, and I could warm to that. That seemed to me to be a rather promising approach. And I suppose if you wanted to apply that in a positive way to religion, you would say that in highly evolved religious systems, the various experiences that people within one religion, within one religious tradition report, hang together in some sort of mutual coherence. But that set me thinking about the reason why scientific beliefs are, I think, so much more persuasive than either religious beliefs or than simple perceptual beliefs. Everybody knows that visual illusions and other sensory illusions are remarkably persuasive. So actually, we don't necessarily trust our sense organs. Our sense organs quite often do mislead us. How do we know they mislead us? Well, we know from, again, hanging together scientific data which are a whole corpus of experimental data, of theory, of observational data, all of which hang together in the same kind of way as I think he was implying for religions. If we ask how do we know that the continents drift about in plate tectonics, how do we know that DNA is a double helix? Nobody has seen these things. This is not direct perceptual information. What this is evidence put together by the entire international scientific community, where the measurements that are used in substantiation of theories and hypotheses are sense data. You need eyes to read the gauges of your instrument. You need eyes to read the fingerprint patterns of magnetic stripes on the sea floor, which indicate that the sea floor is spreading, well, not eyes, but magnetometers, and then eyes read the gauges on the magnetometers. So certainly sense data lie at the bottom of all scientific observation and experiment, but in a very mundane, ordinary sort of way. The important evidence comes not from direct sensory perception, but from hypotheses tested, from measurements exhaustively made, from computations made upon them, from a consensus which emerges from, as I said, the entire scientific community. There are notorious cases where perception, simple perceptual beliefs, to use his phrase, are actually disconcertingly disproved by scientific evidence. I mentioned visual illusions, but the weirdness of quantum mechanics, for example, which is flat contrary to perceptual beliefs and deeply disconcerting to anybody who relies on perceptual beliefs and intuitive beliefs. Nevertheless, the experimental evidence in favor of quantum mechanics is overwhelmingly strong. And perhaps I'd better hand over to Dr. DeRose on that.
Yeah, well, we're not going to be able to settle these, but just to quickly remark, on the intolerable skepticism, skating over some crucial assumptions, but the basic idea is, if your answer, I mean, view it this way. You want to know, imagine yourself faced with a skeptic, and you want to know, you ask the skeptic, what do I need to convince you? And he says, well, for your belief, for this belief, you need to give me evidence for it. And you eventually will want to know, well, which propositions will you accept as evidence without my providing evidence for them? And if he says absolutely none, I want evidence for every single one of them, and also won't allow circular reasoning, it looks like you won't have anything to begin with in your argumentation. I mean, the way to put it is, if all our beliefs are treated as guilty until proven innocent, you won't be able to prove any of them innocent because you have nothing to begin with. Thus, we try to treat at least some of them as innocent until proven guilty. And it looks like the best way to do that is to take certain simple perceptual beliefs as being among those who get that special status. You are absolutely right. Our simple perceptual beliefs go wrong. We find this out, and we correct them. Right? That's because the rationality that's conferred on them in this non-evidential way is defeasible. And what happens is, and this is one of the things science does for us, is tells us when we're going wrong. But see, the difference is, if you treat your beliefs generally as innocent until proven guilty, then there is the possibility of proving some guilty, and we do that. Right? But if you treat them all as guilty until proven innocent, there's no doing anything. That's why this approach to epistemology takes reasoning as giving some initial status to the beliefs we naturally form, and sees reasoning as just trying to adjudicate among them. And that means even if theistic beliefs have this status, right, there's still the possibility that they get proven guilty, and that may happen.
Well, then what is the difference between, why privilege theistic beliefs rather than the literally billions of beliefs which